returns, right? So how do you find the unicorn? So you have to hope for a unicorn. If you're investing in a company that at best can be worth $1 million in 2 or 3 years, that may be a wonderful company for somebody starting from nothing and for their family, but it's not the kind of company that an investor can invest in. And so you want to hope and plan for the upside, but you have to be sure that if it doesn't quite work, and this is where I differ from some other angels will tell you, okay, you got to go as big on the upside as possible, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't work because you're gambling on the upside. I would tell you that you have to be rational on the downside also. So even if it doesn't get to be a super unicorn, can you at least have a viable company on the downside? And then by this point, you've taken a big opening group of companies, you've cut it down by thesis, by whether it works, by looking at the upside and the downside, and then you're looking at these companies in terms of the founder, right? We call it betting the jockey, not the horse. You want to know somebody because no business in my entire investing history has ever worked exactly according to plan. So therefore, if the plans change, you're betting on the founder to change with it. And so you have to make sure that all the things that in my talk that you've referred to, that whether it's integrity and passion and experience, all those things, you have the right founder. And then at the end of the day, you make sure you're compatible with them, that the company is meeting your thesis, that you have an appropriate upside, that you've protected the downside, and then you make sure that the documents are all legal and straight and very clear as to what's going on, and then you go for it.
You're an early pioneer angel investor. So what originally drove you to this type of investing, and how has the landscape changed over time?
I am actually, I'm a 5th generation serial entrepreneur, but I'm actually a 3rd generation angel investor. And I'm not sure I have ever met any other 3rd generation angel investors. So my name is David S. Rose, and I was named after my great uncle, the first David Rose, who was born in the 19th century. And he was an active angel investor. He was the angel investor behind the portable kidney dialysis units, vascular stapling, hyperbaric operating chambers in hospitals. He personally invented through-the-wall air conditioners, desalination projects in the Middle East. So this is a guy who, when I was just growing up, and he would tell us these stories about these things he was investing in. Everybody else back then, this is many, half a century ago, everybody else thought he was completely crazy and this was some whatever plaything. I found these absolutely fascinating. So I knew from an early age that you could actually have an impact and invest in these kinds of companies. But I am an entrepreneur first and foremost. And so I started out as an entrepreneur. I began starting companies when I was 10 or 12 years old, started companies throughout high school and college and business school and after business school and during the dot-com boom. And then along came the dot-com crash. And at that point, I had a company that had become a multinational, had raised tens of millions of dollars in venture capital. We're doing all kinds of things, cover of PC Magazine, and the dot-com crash happened. The whole world came to an end and that company evaporated. So at that point, I moved temporarily from the bright side of being an entrepreneur to the dark side of being an investor. And so I joined the local angel group here in New York and started making angel investments. If I couldn't start a company myself, at least I could help and support entrepreneurs who were starting other companies. And that was actually a very interesting time to invest because we called it the nuclear winter. After the dot-com crash, VCs at that point had raised enormous amounts of money. I mean, $200 billion was sitting in venture capital bank accounts, but they were so scared because of the dot-com crash that they weren't investing in anything. So the only people who were investing in startups were these crazy angel investors, and therefore valuations were very, very low. You're talking about valuations at the 1 million, 2 million level, not today's seed valuations of 20 million. And so you had an opportunity to invest in some really interesting companies. And so that's how I got started doing that. And then being an entrepreneurial type, I realized that angel investing was actually a very uncoordinated and inefficient operation. So I finally got back into the business, started a company called Gust, which which today is the infrastructure platform for most of the angel groups in the world to make it more efficient and more effective. And then with that started, the rest is history.
Before that, do you remember your first angel investment? If you go back to your first angel investment, what would you like to tell yourself about this angel investing journey? And what are the frequently made mistakes of all the angel investors in this journey?
So when I began angel investing, my first angel investment was probably well before I became became an official angel. It was probably when I was still an entrepreneur, or even before that, when I was working in a like our family business. And a friend had a company that I thought was interesting, so I invested in that. But that was more of an investment as a friend. That really wasn't a thoughtful, considered angel investment. After the crash, when I became seriously angel investing, and I had to join this group of other angel investors. And angel groups, by the way, are very, very helpful. They're a wonderful way to understand the market, to learn from other people, to get angel mentors and the like. So one of the earliest deals that I invested in there, my first two deals were very interesting. One of them was from a company that was doing mobile applications for air conditioning service people and plumbing service people. And it made a whole heck of a lot of sense, because back then plumbers and electricians were dispatched using paper. They would call the office and so on and so forth. Very inefficient. And we were just having the first mobile devices come out. And so the idea here was to connect everything digitally on a mobile device so you could actually get the appointment and check in the result and check for parts and so on and so forth. It was a brilliant idea, but there were two problems with it. And in retrospect, looking back on it now, one of them was the founder, while a very nice guy and a smart guy who put his own money in, was not really an entrepreneur, in the sense that in my book in chapter 4, I discuss, the entrepreneur, capital T, capital E, somebody on whom you are betting your whole investment. And this guy was a nice, great guy, but he didn't have that sort of fire in the belly. He wasn't able to sort of shift with the time. So that was problem number one. And then problem number two was I didn't really do my research. Intuitively, it made a lot of sense, but I didn't do my research by actually talking to potential clients and saying, hey, customers, would you use this? And it turned out that back then, this was so early, before the iPhone, before Android, before mobile devices, before everything, that the idea of using for a plumber to use this high technology mobile device was crazy. They thought people were insane. So nobody ever bought this thing. It was a total disaster because it was way ahead of its time. So that was my first unfortunate experience. On the other hand, my second deal was I was investing in a brother-sister team. And that's, by the way, very interesting. Husband and wife teams can be very problematic in terms of investing, because you have family dynamics and sexual dynamics and partnership dynamics on the side. But I have found that investing in siblings is actually really good, because if you go sort of business with your brother or sister, you don't have the family tensions that you have in a husband and wife, but you have people who have known each other their entire lives, know that they work well together, and know that they want to do this. So this was a brother-sister team. She was the CEO, he was the CTO, and they were doing some design software, middleware design software for designers to connect them to pre-press things and so on. And I was really impressed with the team, and that was a good choice because she was a great founder. And they had a previous investor who had really sort of screwed them up and had defaulted on something and was trying to get back. And so they were doing a restart. And so I invested in that one. Within a year and a half, they had actually been acquired by Kodak. And so that was a 10x return on my second angel investment. So that said, oh, whoa, you can really make, now I haven't had that kind of return in many years since then, but having one experience where I learned some hard lessons about how to do it, and the second experience, which made me a lot of money, was really very nice. And so that's how I sort of got started.
And additional questions. What do you see for the current angel investors frequently mistakes? What are their mistakes?
The mistakes that angels make when they're new angels is not really understanding the whole universe. And that's why my book is such a really interesting place for people to start. So if you're even thinking of being an angel investor, I really would strongly recommend my book, because it gives you the whole beginning to end, picture of what to do, how to do it, and the overview. So angel investing, if you do it right, it is far from a slam dunk. It is far from a guaranteed you'll make a lot of money. It is very risky. It is about as risky an investment as you can ever possibly conceivably make. But understanding that, if you do it thoughtfully and correctly, with investing in a lot of companies over a lot of time, with a real process and understanding what you're doing, you can actually get very decent returns and have a lot of fun while doing it. And so the biggest problem with new angel investors is they don't have that context. They don't understand really what they're doing. They may understand one particular product, but they don't understand the idea of a company and a startup and how that works. They may know the founder and love the founder, but they don't understand the product or something else. So you really need to have a full understanding of what you're going into before you write that first check. The biggest challenge that we see in angel groups, where you actually have experienced members who are nurturing and helping new members, a new member comes in and they've been thinking about it. Maybe somebody has shown them a deal in the past that they didn't want to do. They come to the angel group, and there they go to their first meeting and they see 2 or 3 or 5 companies pitching. Now, these companies have been, 5 out of 50 that have been applied to pitch. And so they've refined their pitch and they've practiced and they're really perfect. And so the new angel comes in, looks and sees 5 companies, all of which sound amazing because, of course, every startup founder, when they do their pitch, it shows it's going to change the world and be a unicorn. So they see 5 things and then they talk to their other angels who are there and they invest in one of these things. And then they come back the next week, the next month to the angel group, and they see another 5 pitches and they're all equally wonderful. So they make a second investment. This is really great. And then they get to the 3rd month and they come in and they see 5 more pitches and they want to go make another investment. And at this point, their spouse says, wait a minute. Yeah, how much of our money are you going to be spending on doing all this angel stuff? Let's take it easy a little bit. And so they begin to then hold off and they wait a few months. And then by the time they get to the 6th or 8th or 10th month, that first company they invested comes back and says, it's really great, really exciting, but it didn't quite work out. And so we really need to raise another round. And can you please put in some more money into this company? Which is the first time they realize that the value of their portfolio doesn't only go up, it can also go down a little bit. And at that point, if you can get through your first year or 2 and make 2 or 3 angel investments and actually keep going and still want to do it, that may be